Under the influence of mercantilism, which believed that wealth is a zero-sum game with one better off and the other worse off during a trade, many European countries advocated severe restrictions on import and aggressive efforts to increase export. The resulting export surplus was supposed to enrich the nation through the inflow of precious metals. Adam Smith in 1776, who is regarded as the father of modern economics, countered mercantilist ideas by developing the concept of absolute advantage. He argued that it was impossible for all nations to become rich simultaneously by following mercantilist policies, because the export of one nation is another nation's import. However, all nations would gain simultaneously if they practiced free trade and specialized in accordance with their absolute advantage. According to Adam Smith in his The Wealth of Nations, 1776, trade between nations is beneficial if it is based on absolute advantage. That is, when one nation is more efficient than another in producing one commodity, but is less efficient than the other nation in producing a second commodity, then both countries can gain by each specializing in producing the commodity of its absolute advantage and exchanging part of its output with the other nation for the commodity of its absolute disadvantage. Put more simply, a country should produce only goods with which it is most efficient and trade for those goods with which it is not efficient. To be more specific, the theory of absolute advantage holds that a commodity will be produced in the country where it costs least in terms of resources, capital, land, and labor. For example, Table 1 indicates what the International Division of Labor should be. As the United States has an absolute advantage in wheat and the UK has an absolute advantage in cloth, Smith's absolute advantage is determined by a simple comparison of labor productivity across countries. It predicts that the United States will produce only wheat and the UK will produce only cloth. Both nations would gain if they have unrestricted trade in wheat and cloth. If they trade 6 wheat for 6 cloth, then the gain of the United States is half an hour's work, which is required to produce the extra 2 cloth that is getting through trade with the UK. Because the UK stops wheat production, the 6 wheat it gets from the United States will save 6 hours of labor time with which 30 cloths can be produced. After exchanging 6 cloths out of 30 cloths, the UK is left with 24 cloths, which is equivalent to almost 5 hours labor time. The table shows that nations can produce more quantities of goods in which they have absolute advantage with the labor time they save through international trade. Now, let's take a look at another example of absolute advantage. Suppose there are 2 nations trading with each other. Nation A has an absolute advantage in the production of commodity 1 because it needs only 3 labor days to produce 1 unit of it, while Nation B needs 6 labor days. Nation B has an absolute advantage in commodity 2 because it only needs 4 labor days to produce 1 net, whereas Nation A needs 8. If both nations start trading with each other, each nation will specialize in the production of the good, with which it has an absolute advantage, and obtain the other commodity through international trade. So, more units of both commodities can be produced overall because the given resources are utilized more sufficiently and efficiently. Through trade, both nations are able to consume more units of at least one commodity. In our example, nation A would specialize completely in commodity first, and nation B in commodity second. Though Smith successfully established the case for free trade, he did not develop the concept of comparative advantage, and there are certain limitations of his theory. First, it does not take into account transportation costs involved in selling the product in international market. Second, it's based on the assumption that exchange rates are stable, which is seldom the case and hence a imitation. Third, it also assumes that labor can switch between products easily and they will work with same efficiency, which in reality can never happen, because absolute advantage is determined by a simple comparison of labor productivity. It is possible for a nation to have absolute advantage in nothing. But according to the absolute advantage, trade occurs only when each country has an absolute advantage over the other in producing one commodity. However, if there is one nation that has no absolute advantage in the production of any product, will there still be benefit to trade, or will trade even occur? The answer may be found in the extension of the absolute advantage, the theory of comparative advantage.